Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing The King of Cuba by Cristina Garcia. Talk a little bit about the author, go into what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I would recommend the book to, and what I will be reading for next time. So Cristina Garcia is a Cuban-born author, best known for one of her debut novel, Dreaming in Cuban, that came out, I believe, in 1992. This is the first novel of hers that I've read. She has published a series of novels. I think this book, The King of Cuba, was her most recent work in 2013. She's also written for Time magazine as well as done some work as a professor. So both journalistic work as a professorial work as well as fiction writing. So what this book is, King of Cuba, is about two men, the leader of Cuba, who is never named as Fidel Castro, but is kind of clearly Fidel Castro or a Fidel Castro-like figure. His brother, Fernando, I think is a stand-in for Raul Castro, though it's really never explicitly stated as such. His story is told in parallel with a Cuban American who was exiled to America after his father's land was seized in the revolution of Cuba. And we kind of see their two stories told in parallel. The gentleman who lives in both Miami and New York, his name is Goyo, and Goyo is set out to kill El Leader, or El Comandante, as he's known. And I guess I should apologize right now. My Spanish is not very good, really close to non-existent. So if I mispronounce anything, I do apologize. He is on a mission to kill El Leader due to both kind of personal reasons and the broader geopolitical reasons due to his revolution in Cuba, kind of exiling thousands of people. And like I said before, his father's land in that was seized. Goyo's father's land was seized, which led to a series of tragedies that I don't want to touch on because it's in the book. It's really done really well there. You understand why he has this vendetta against a leader, and so he is on a mission to kill him. Both men are in their, I believe, in their 80s. I think they're both maybe the late 70s, early 80s. So they're both elderly men, and their stories are really told in parallel to one another. One of the things I liked a lot about the book was that the stories are kind of told back and forth. You get the viewpoints of both men, and you kind of see really how similar they are. And then you also get to see some of their differences and how their viewpoints kind of differ, and how they view themselves differs a little bit. But the power there and kind of the parallel structure I enjoyed a lot. I also enjoyed in the chapters, it's written from the perspectives of, it's not in first person, but it's written from the perspectives of both men, but you also get footnotes of other Cuban individuals, mostly people who live in Cuba, who kind of tell their story. El Leader, El Comandante, will be saying something, and then you'll see an asterisk, and below that there'll be a quote from someone who works in a bar, or someone who works with tourists, or someone who is a writer, who's a dissident, who's a poet. And you kind of get the voices of the Cuban people themselves, which I thought was actually a really cool touch to this. I also really liked, the book is really not about this, but Goyo has a son who suffers from some kind of mental illness, even though it's never really stated what exactly the mental illness is. But the way that relationship is handled just felt really real to me. I have someone in my family who is essentially a caretaker for someone who with mental illness, and a lot of his dealing with his son. Again, it's not the main point of the novel, but kind of the mixture of frustration but also love that he has, and how those two emotions kind of interact, and throughout the novel I thought was really beautifully done. Some of the things I didn't like about it, I actually really enjoyed this novel overall, so the things I didn't like about it are somewhat nitpicky, but one of the characters, the daughter of one of the two men. Her relationship with her dad really isn't super fleshed out. And her being in the novel felt kind of tacked on at times. I felt that way with a couple of the other side characters, the women in the life of the two leaders. I don't know if this is a commentary on how they view women or if it just is the way that I read it, but it felt like their stories were not really as fleshed out. The relationships really were not as fleshed out, and I think the novel suffered from that. Overall, I did really enjoy it. I think if you're someone who wants to kind of learn more about the viewpoints of kind of the Cuban diaspora, but you don't want to read it from a nonfiction level, I think this is actually a really good entryway just to get a little bit of taste of it. Like I said, I think the writing is really enjoyable. It's a fairly quick read. I enjoyed it. At times it could be, I don't want to call it plotless because there is kind of an overarching plot, but the plot, it feels kind of secondary to kind of getting into the lives of these two main characters. But if you're someone who can kind of put that aside or it doesn't bother as much, like I said, I enjoyed the reading. I kind of enjoyed the asides that were in there with the different characters. So overall, I really did enjoy it. Next week, I will be reading Seeing by Jose Saramago. And until next time, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to leave a comment below if there's anything you feel that I missed or something you particularly felt strongly about for this or any other work. And again, feel free to follow me on Twitter. I'll leave a Twitter link below in the comments. Until next time, bye.